So David, thanks for agreeing to be part of cohort 1 and cohort 2 for our course, Coaching Beyond. I just want to ask you, from your perspective of your coaching and supervision experience, as a coaching profession, what's ours to do?
When we actually look at it, what coaching is about at its base is creating clarity. It's helping people to see what they don't see now, and therefore to make better decisions. And that could be a description of what's a straight way of what's needed in climate change, creating awareness, creating and therefore making better decisions based upon that awareness that we have. And that works at every level, from the individual to the organization, through to societies. And so we're creating clarity. And therefore, if we just create clarity for an individual about their career progression, we're not really adding much value. And coaches like to think that we're adding value. But if we're not adding social capital, if we're not environmental capital as well, for example, we're only adding a tiny little bit of value. We're helping one more executive climb another ladder up the rung, which they would have done probably anyway. When we start to widen their awareness and see the systems around them and how those systems are affected by them and they affect those systems, firstly, they can be much more effective in managing their teams. But equally, we start to create big ripples so that they can actually affect change in a much wider way. And we're seeing an evolution. We saw coaching is about helping people develop a couple of skills, through to coaching, helping people become better leaders, through helping leaders become more effective at creating a coaching culture inside their team. Those are part of the evolution. But now we're seeing team coaching, looking at the whole team system and coaching teams of teams. And then organizational coaching. And we can move beyond that, although it's very rare for that to see that happening. But the scope of coaching has been too limited. It's been really about helping one little individual improve in something small. That's not going to do any more than we would achieve by chucking a couple of rocks in the sea. So what we want to do is actually, if we want to change the environment around us, and in the broadest sense, in environment meaning not just the physical environment, but the society, addressing issues like poverty, which are all linked, helping people see the links between themselves as an individual working in an organization that has an impact on the world around them. That's what I think coaches have an obligation to do. Now, to do that, we've got to educate ourselves.
Yeah, thank you, David. And within that context, how do ethics come into play?
Well, most people like to think of themselves as ethical, as being a basically good person. But intriguingly, one little study showed that the majority of people in jail think they're more ethical than average. And so this raises some interesting dilemmas for us, because what we do is the basis of ethics, not what we like to think we might do. So so a lot of what we're trying to do as coaches is help people identify their ideal self and work to becoming more like that ideal self. And that means really reflecting upon and making decisions based upon strong principles of, effectively, are we achieving positive or negative outcomes? And if the positive outcomes are defined in terms of making more money or keeping an organization afloat when it might otherwise have gone under, that's a very limited view of how we're actually creating something positive. If by sustaining that organization, it's actually doing more harm, then we have to be able to step back and say, why are we doing that? So looking at the bigger picture of what we're doing. I noted the other day that George Clooney promoting soya products, but not really thinking about the impact on people burning down forests in order to plant these. So promoting one good and not looking at the impact more widely. So helping our leaders think systemically. And again, it means we have to become much more capable of systemic thinking ourselves. So we've got to be competent, not just at simple systems thinking, but at complicated systems thinking, at complex systems thinking, and at chaotic systems thinking. So we've got to be able to work within all of those, and to help the leaders that we work with think in this way. And what we've learned from over certainly anecdotally is that when we persuade a leader or to actually start looking at the world through a systemic lens, they become much more aware of the impact that their decisions are making.
Yes, that's very, very good. And within that context, the contracting of systemic thinking, or contracting of climate and planetary awareness or biodiversity, what would you do in that case?
Well, we had a lovely little analogy a couple of days ago, and it was the leader expecting the coach to come and help them drain the swamp, and the coach saying, "No, I'm here to help you swim in it." And I think we challenge simplistic solutions. Because people aren't aware very often that they are thinking simplistically. There's a great new book out by Adam Grant called Think Again, which is about stopping and questioning our simplistic assumptions. I make a habit of trying to find things where I'm questioning my assumptions regularly, and finding things which okay, I thought that, but now I realize I was wrong. It's more nuanced than that. One last week, for example, I had the interesting insight that we always assume that imposter syndrome is a bad thing. But actually, a certain amount of imposter syndrome, as long as we manage it effectively, is what keeps us on our toes as coaches. And so looking at imposter syndrome in a different way, a different set of assumptions. So we're role modeling this whole process of questioning our assumptions and seeing systems in a more complex way than people are used to.
And if you were going to give people who are coaches or supervisors or leaders a tip for taking forward some of those ways of being and thinking, what would you give them as their top tip?
I think be curious. We tend to shut down so many avenues of inquiry because we already know things, or because we think we understand what's going on. And it's only when things go badly wrong that we have to question that. And so it's this constant curiosity. What alternative ways are there to look at this? Who else's perspective might this be? Might we want to apply here? A lot of the work we're doing at the moment is in reciprocal mentoring, where we've got senior executives linked with Black and minority ethnic junior employees in a co-learning relationship, challenging their assumptions about what the world is like through the eyes of other people. And for leaders live in a bubble. They because of the privilege that they have, they are able to erect walls around themselves. It's like being in a gated community. You don't see the poverty outside, or the devastation outside. So everything's rosy in your garden because you've got all the water and the resources to keep it and to keep it nice and neat and tidy and clean. But as soon as you but therefore to step outside of your shell, your gated community, and see the world through other eyes is, I think, essential. But few executives ever do that. They're too busy being busy.
Thank you, David. That's very kind.